On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.
Welcome back to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Maura Johnson. Today's episode is a fun one because I'm chatting with the co-creators of Improv For Lawyers, an interactive workshop designed to teach attorneys crucial listening and thinking skills through improvisation techniques. While some may think improv is best left to the comedians, attorney Michael Murphy and improv educator Mike Marbach are demonstrating how the skills are transferable to the legal profession. Murphy is a clinical professor of law and the director of the Entrepreneurial Business Law Clinic at the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. Marbach is the founder of Crossroads Community Theater, an Indianapolis-based nonprofit dedicated to improvisational theater and comedic arts. In 2020, the two began collaborating on this venture and are now offering the course to law firms and individual attorneys for CLE credit. In this episode, we talk about how the course caters to practicing attorneys and the skills they need to succeed, as well as how improvisation techniques apply to the general population, including what improv experiences tend to trip people up in practice. But before we get into the episode, here's a word from our sponsor.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and I'm excited about the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to be here.
When I think of improv, I obviously think of it in the context of a stage performance, comedy show, but can you guys just explain what Improv for Lawyers is and how you came up with the program?
It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm a huge proponent in the life skills that improv brings to anybody who has the opportunity to take a class or a workshop. And in thinking of ways to do that with professions, I was looking into various occupations and how it might be useful. I had talked to another lawyer in Philly, where I am from, and she had suggested CLE classes for lawyers. But I was looking for someone who had experience on both sides of that, and that led me to Michael Murphy here. And I think it was a long process at first. We kept going back and forth, and there would be months, maybe longer, of just communications. Michael will tell you about what he does, but he's super busy. I was super, super busy, and it just kept lagging. And then we finally got somewhere. I think was it during the pandemic, Michael?
It was.
Yeah. I guess that's what it took to finally get this going. So he had reached out and really gave it a good push to bring it about. That's my end of things, I think.
Yeah, and I can jump in and talk about my experience here. This sort of starts years ago when I went to a friend's improv show and afterwards said, "Man, that looked really fun. I should do that." And my friend took it upon himself to basically harass me until I took an improv class by saying, "You absolutely must do this. This is good for you. You will enjoy it." And as soon as I took it, I realized, wow, this isn't just a fun thing to do, but this is really going to help me do my job better. At the time, I was working as in-house counsel at a financial services company, doing negotiations, drafting contracts, things like that. And I'd been a trial lawyer before that for about 8 years. And I thought, wow, I wish I had done this even when I was doing that work too. And that program was in no small part organized and put on by Michael, who has a wonderful analytical mind when it comes to comedy and also education. And so I realized pretty quickly there was an intersectionality of lawyering skills and improv that was particularly bountiful, and looked around and realized that there were some improv CLEs out there and even some law school classes in improv, and thought it'd be great someday to do this. And then Michael reached out to me with this idea, and I said, yeah, let's absolutely run with it. But it has been a long time coming for sure.
So at what point did you officially launch the program and start doing these courses with people?
Yeah, that was Michael. And I do think it was during the pandemic, but you can speak to that, Michael.
Yeah, it was during the pandemic. And by that point, I had transitioned to teaching full time. So now I teach at the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law as directing their entrepreneurship legal clinic. So I work with startups and with students who do work for startups. But at the time, I was doing that work at the University of Pennsylvania in Philly. But of course, I was doing it from my house. And I thought, all right, well, I have a little bit more time and space than usual to put together some projects I've always wanted to do. And I thought that improv CLE project's a pretty good idea. I should reach out to Michael and follow up on that and get that going. And then, sort of flashing forward a little bit, I was on a limited term position at Penn, and my term expired. And I looked around to continue to doing the same work because I love the work, and found an opportunity at Duke University's law school, where I was for 2.5 years. And that school has a mini class. They have like 2-day classes that they offer in between semesters for all kinds of interesting topics that don't necessarily lend themselves to an entire semester. And so I was able to successfully pitch a sort of modified version of this CLE to Duke, and taught that 2 different years to much success to law students. And so that was sort of our proof of concept, as we say in the entrepreneurship world, right? Of where we tried to see if it actually worked. And I did that with a local improv teacher down in Durham, North Carolina, and it worked beautifully. And so now we feel as if we have a curriculum that I think can work pretty much anywhere, either within a law firm from lawyers that know each other, or even just from lawyers who are coming in off the street and don't know each other.
Yeah. So can you break down essentially what the class, how it's structured, and who takes the course? I know you said both law firms and then people who just come off the street.
Michael?
Sure. Oh yeah, I got this one. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it it depends on what you're looking from, right? If you're looking at it from the improv side, you'll see what amounts to an introductory improv workshop with the things that one does in an introductory improv workshop, with a weird part where we break down each improv exercise and talk about how it relates to lawyering. If you're looking at it from the CLE perspective, it is completely different than anything you've ever done, right? Most CLEs, you're sitting there staring at your email while someone sort of drones on, and maybe you take away 1 or 2 things that are useful to your job, or maybe not if you're near your compliance deadline and you just need to take whatever class. This is totally different from that. You're on your feet, interacting with people, moving, practicing skills, and you'll be doing real improv exercises, really silly things. You will be doing things that you would see on Whose Line It Is Anyway, or if you went to an improv show, and maybe even other exercises that are a little bit trickier, right? You'll be taking on characters and doing scenes. You'll be pretending that you're carrying a ball and handing it to someone else, things like that. But after each of those exercises, which are highly interactive, you're not looking at your phone, you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking about anything else. We then break down those exercises and talk about what you just did and how that relates to lawyering. Every single improv exercise relates to lawyering in one way or another, some very, very directly and easy to see, and some a little less easy to see. They all test your ability to think on your feet, your ability to really listen and be present. And then some of them are even a little bit trickier and more advanced. For example, we'll do an exercise called Mad, Sad, Glad, where you pick an emotion and then you're working with a scene partner, and whatever they say, you're going to heighten that emotion. So whatever they say, you're sad and you're going to get sadder, right? And that's a fun exercise. It gets you out of your head. It's usually funny for the people watching. But what you're doing there is practicing taking on a professional emotion, right? In negotiations, in court, lawyers are often taking on a different emotion than the one that they feel in their hearts at that time as a person, human being. They have to be mad for their client. They have to be sad for their client. And learning how to put on that emotion with authenticity, but then step away from it, is a tremendous skill that, quite frankly, I can say as a faculty member at a law school, isn't a huge part of our curriculum, which means that we don't teach it, which means that lawyers got to learn it somewhere. And that's where I think there's real value in this program. As I pitched to the dean at Duke to get it added to the curriculum there, I said, this class, which means this CLE, really helps lawyers and law students practice pretty much every skill there is in being a lawyer, except for writing. You don't really write. But we cover writing in law school elsewhere, and there's CLEs on writing that are wonderful. So that one you can check, you can take off the list, but everything else, this CLE helps you with.
Yeah. I would add the one of the biggest things I think about benefits to the CLE, but also improv in general, is the communication and connection aspect and truly listening to someone, not just for your next opportunity to talk, but as an actual response to what was said. Trying not to pre-plan how a conversation will go. You can practice and try to get, just like you would in sports, practice different plays. But when the ball comes to you, it also depends on how many people are on base, what inning it is, all of those sorts of things. So the general communication aspect is super helpful. Connecting with human beings, offering compliments, simple things like that we do at the end of a class. Is just checking in with each other at the beginning. What's going on in your life at the end of a class? What did you enjoy? What did someone do? So building some sort of empathy to the situations that you're dealing with, I think would be applicable as well. And some of the stuff Michael Murphy has mentioned in regular improv, a lot of times scares people. So some of those words give people the impression that they're going to be performing in some way. Almost everybody that I have taught, and it's thousands of people at this time, has thought, I couldn't do that. I can't do that. And then they get into the class and they do that. And they do well at that, at the improv side of things. Yeah, there is a little bit of a performance aspect of things, but that's what you're doing every single day when you wake up until you go to bed. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's just about practicing what you do in between the opening of the eyes and the shutting of the eyes for the day.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it absolutely slays the monster of imposter syndrome, which is critically important, especially for junior attorneys who are going to work every day and doing something for the first time that might scare them.
Yeah. And just bouncing off of that, when it comes to these classes, what are those kind of elements that the participants have a challenge? Because I feel like lawyers tend to be maybe one type of personality or very shy maybe, but is that kind of like experience and having to almost act a little bit a barrier for some of them, have you noticed?
Sure, I can take this one. Yeah, there's two things going on here, and one is that in improv you're taking on a different persona, and usually it's goofy, right? Like usually it's something that is humorous or entertaining, but very much outside of who you are, and that can absolutely conflict. I've seen with law students and lawyers who've tried it with their professional persona, right, which are supposed to be super authoritative, smart, and certainly not silly, right? There's no room for silliness in the courtroom, right? And so getting lawyers to sort of be outside of their heads and be silly can take a little bit of warming up and a little bit of time. But if you create the right environment, it is amazing to see people just loosen up and operate at what one of Mike and I's improv friends from Philadelphia would call the speed of fun, right? Which is the point in which you are not filtering everything that you're saying 14 different times and slowing down, but you're just allowing the sort of natural flow of your communication to go, right? And you're operating on that higher level that really, really good lawyers can operate on, in which they're processing information, but then also communicating at an incredibly high level, but also incredibly fluidly. And the idea is the more that you practice getting into that flow, the better. So that's the first one. The second one is, and this goes to the underlying principle of improv that I can't believe we haven't mentioned yet, of course, which is yes and, right? The idea that in improv, if you're doing a scene, whatever someone else in the scene does, you should validate that and build on it, right? So if Mike and I are doing a scene in which we are cowboys, right? And he says, we've got to rope all these cattle, right? The wrong thing for me to do is to say, no, we don't. Like we're we're going to hunt them and eat them, right? Like that.
They're not cattle, they're dogs.
Exactly. How are we going to do that on the moon, right? Like all those kinds of things really throw the scene off. It's weird to watch, and you see two people sort of fight about what they're doing. But instead, I would say something like, "Oh yes, we must rope all of these cattle, but I once again left my rope back at the ranch, right?" And then that becomes a scene about how I'm forgetful and we have a strained relationship or something. So that's how that works, right? Is you validate what someone says and you build on it. Lawyers don't always operate on that wavelength, right? Lawyers are often what we call no buts, right? They say no, but and that can be a real challenge. I know that when I pivoted to working with entrepreneurs and startups, if I wasn't yes-anding, my clients would not listen to me. They want to do what they want to do. The laws that affect what they do are just one part of a larger framework. And if I keep telling them no, they will just go somewhere else where they get a yes. And so I've had to really embrace yes and in what I do. And then, of course, as someone who has done oral arguments in front of a judge, you probably want to yes and the judge when the judge has things to say to you. And if anything, you would say something along the lines of, "Yes, Your Honor, however," right? Which is a little bit of a yes, but even still, you definitely don't want to say, "No, Your Honor, I think you really got this one wrong." They really hate that. And so it's that underlying principle, once you sort of embrace it, feels a little alien, but will really help you do your job better. And then obviously, I didn't even mention, of course, if you're in a negotiation with someone and they really want something, you don't want to necessarily be coming at them from a confrontational aspect of a no, no, no. You want to say, "Well, yes, we could do that." And right. And then whatever you're proposing is hopefully some sort of middle ground that will make your concession not so bad.
What Michael had mentioned there is absolutely true for lawyers. I would add that it is true of everyone that takes a class, everyone that comes into our classes at Crossroads. We have that they come in with that yes, but like Michael mentioned it in terms of the profession of lawyering, but the default is no or yes, but for most people that come in, because that's how they go through their daily lives, being told no and then telling no to others, or saying, yeah, that's a decent idea, but here's my thing that's better, or here's how I want to do it. Not never recognizing that there are multiple ways to get somewhere.
Mm.
So that's only real thing I wanted to add to the end there.
Yeah. So when it comes to the audience that or the participants that you guys engage with, does it tend to be younger lawyers? Because I feel like something that I've spoken to law students, and I think something that they emphasize is you don't necessarily learn how to maneuver a courtroom per se in law school, because again, it is a lot of writing, it's those practical skills. But what kind of participants are you guys seeing coming in the door?
Michael?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, definitely younger lawyers, right? They seem to have the more interest. I think lawyers who are more experienced think that they have everything figured out. They know how they're doing their job, and they may be less interested in running around a room with a bunch of people they don't know, pretending to rope cattle. And so, but younger lawyers are absolutely very thirsty to build those skills any way they possibly can, and even gain that comfort level every possibly can. But that being said, I didn't come to improv until I had been practicing for several years. And while I wish I had done it sooner, I'm still very glad that I did it. And having taken many CLEs in which I have been drinking watered down coffee and staring at a PowerPoint, I would implore any seasoned attorneys who need some CLE credits and are interested in doing something even remotely different to give this one a chance, because it will, I underline will, be more fun than your other CLEs.
Mm.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, what Michael is mentioning there is another one that I will open up, because the experience that he's describing with the lawyers is another one that's fairly universal. There are definitely exceptions, but when we go in, when we're dealing with teachers, professional learning points, or the lawyers, or we've done workshops with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia with their fellows, it is the folks that have been doing it for a good while who tend to be more resistant to this. But again, that said, there are definitely people from all professions who come in and have a have their outlook changed or come in with it already open to this. Like when you have a CLE class, everybody's already got something in common other than being human beings. You are lawyers. You're involved in the law in some way. When you take a regular improv class, there's, other than the human being factor, there's little in common. And within 2 hours, especially when we do our intro classes where you have people of all different ages, all different backgrounds, all different professions, outlooks, people that signed up themselves, people that came because their friend came and the other one made them. Within the first 2 hours, it goes from super awkward in the lobby of like, I don't know what to expect, I'm scared, to people exchanging numbers and business cards at the end of those classes. And are you going to sign up? Are you going to sign up? Are you going to sign up? And our feedback shows that. It's so when you go into a class where you already have something in common, there's a kind of like built-in advantage. It doesn't take away the initial awkwardness, but it's a little bit less work, I think.
I know that you guys were talking about the different improv scenarios. Do you ever pursue courtroom scenarios where you're trying to translate those skills directly into what they're doing? It's particularly trial lawyers in their everyday life.
Good question. And yeah, we did this a little bit in the Duke class because, and this was one of those delightful gifts that life gives you. The only room in the law school that gave us enough space to be able to move around and do improv happened to be the moot courtroom, which I absolutely loved. And so we had improv court, but we wanted to use this space, right? So there's an improv exercise in which you improvise a monologue, right? So you get up in front of a group of people, you get a suggestion to give a monologue about, and you just start giving one, right? You have to give some sort of coherent speech on that. From a certain perspective with a certain goal that you're making up. And so there, right, we modified it and said that it was going to be an improvised closing argument, obviously, right? We would say, you're representing this client and the trial is about this. Okay, now go, give the closing argument. Refer to the evidence that doesn't exist, but make it up. And obviously that was really fun, right? We had students who had taken moot court and had said, I was so nervous when I did this in moot court because there were judges and I had been prepared and everything. And it would have been great for me to actually have done this a few times so that I was just used to the physicality of standing in front of a bench in a courtroom, thinking and talking at the same time. Like that just would have been something that would have made that learning curve a little flatter. And so we definitely used it for that. And that's something that Mike and I definitely are always thinking about and tweaking is how do we make the exercises a little bit more applicable to what lawyers do. And so something like that is a good example.
In our regular improv classes, our non-CLE classes, we do have a game called Premise Lawyer. And that's what a little bit of what Michael is describing there. But for us, it is for the average person, the non-lawyer going into that class, that is where they get an absurd premise that they have to defend. Not necessarily absurd premise, but just something that is non-political, non-charged, non-religious that they have to, what did you, you had mentioned Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory is the best show of all time. And then that person would have to give several reasons, trying to get into character, people of the jury, and then just roll off, do whatever they can to get some lines of defense that kind of roll off the tongue a little bit. Always fun. One of my favorites.
That's great. And then another exercise that we would do is we'd call it 3 experts, right? Where essentially we have 3 people up who are experts, and we pick something for them to be an expert in, right? And that they comment on whatever that is. So it could be 18th century Swedish art, right? Something super, super weird, especially more fun if it's very likely something that no one knows anything about. And then the experts take on different personas and talk. And for that one, right, like we break it down and say, the applicability here to lawyering is very stark, right? We have to become instant experts in whatever it is happening in our matter, right? Whether that's negotiating a contract or arguing a case in court, we gotta become an expert in that and sound like an expert in that. And especially in the law student version, we break down even sort of the way in which one becomes an expert in anything, right? Which is not always in the conference of a degree, right? We say sometimes you become an expert in something because you decide you are, right? And you start thinking and writing and talking about it, and then flash forward to you being on the evening news with expert on your title. And you're talking like an expert and sounding like an expert, so everyone considers you an expert. And I really love that exercise for that, because in the basic sort of sense, right, lawyers are essentially paid to think and communicate as experts in whatever, right? And practicing doing that is, in one sense, one of the more fundamental skills that we do, regardless of what your lawyer job is.
That's super interesting. Mr. Marbach, this is specifically to you. Both of you can answer it, but obviously you have non-CLE courses. Apart from like the yes and, what kind of, I guess, hard skills are you teaching in improvisation that people just use in everyday life as a communication tool?
Oh, for sure. One of the biggest is listening, learning to slow yourself down, slow down your brain, and listen to what is happening around you, what is happening right in front of you, the words that are coming out of the person's mouth, and not just hearing them, but actually listening and responding. Because so often, as I think I mentioned earlier, you have how a discussion is going to play out. So you're not even necessarily talking with each other; you're talking over each other. So there's that aspect. There's listening with your whole body, paying attention to the body language of others, learning how to read the room, which I'm sure is helpful in a courtroom too, especially maybe dealing with the jury, not trudging forward with something that is very clearly not working in your favor. General conflict resolution is super helpful. With a lot of people, they come in looking for an escape from what happens, what they're doing from 9 to 5 or 24/7. So they get a little bit of a reprieve from the everyday, where they can leave their everyday life at the door and just play, which itself is a draw for adults to have a place where they can be kids again. You're playing make believe and just building these really fun worlds. And if that's all that is for that person, and they don't necessarily use those skills in the real world, that's enough these days, is to just have a place where you can kind of tune out everything else, connect with other human beings, get off a screen, get off a laptop, and experience human life,
Yeah.
and laugh together. There's the empathy aspect, which kind of a lot of improv goes back to listening and general communication, and that's where I believe I'm saying with empathy, we, as I mentioned earlier, we get people from all walks of life, all different occupations, so coming in and experiencing how other people think, changing of opinions, learning different things about different cultures, and putting to rest some stereotypes or expectations of what you might think of other people. There have been lifelong friends that have come out of improv classes. So the relationships that you build, general confidence in front of groups is huge. Definitely pertains to a CLE course. Michael mentioned earlier the getting rid of that imposter syndrome, and also the expert aspect goes back to just general confidence in the words that you are saying and in your position, and why you feel you are correct, while also recognizing that something may happen or something may be said that you have to adapt and respond to. So general adaptability. The other thing, I could go on and on, but the other thing is general support in certain aspects of life, and definitely in some professions. You are alone. You may be a part of a collective, or even they call it a team, but the work you do is alone. You may be in front of other people alone. Here, in a CLE class or in an improv class, you are supported. The ideas that come out of your mouth are agreed to and validated, and that like that just feels so good to not be told no, to have a room full of people that will support you and want to see you succeed. So for a CLE class or a regular improv class, the networking that comes out of these events is really cool. The kind of cross-pollination of arts and professions is amazing. Yeah, so very much for improv. Like our improv class, our improv one class, which is 8 weeks, we call it Improv for Everyone because it really is. It is improv for every person. You do not have to have experience. You have no desire to perform whatsoever. You come in, you connect, and the benefits of improv will really surprise you. And they will sneak up on you until like you recognize you're in a situation in life or at work and you're like, oh, that is literally what we practiced a couple weeks ago. I always talk about it in terms of the Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi is teaching Daniel sweep the floor, paint the fence, wax on, wax off, and Daniel gets mad. Like, how is this helpful? How is this going to help me when I'm in a fight? And he's like, show me paint the fence. And then he does that and he throws a punch at him and he blocks it with paint the fence. So improv skills for life have that aspect when you're taking one of our regular classes. When you're taking a CLE class, it's much more direct. There's not as much painting the fence and waxing on, waxing off. Like Michael has PowerPoints that this is what we just did. This is how it relates to exactly what you do. So there's a ton. I could do a whole series on just talking about the benefits of improv and in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just building two things on that, especially as you get more involved in improv and maybe join an improv team. One key guiding star that you have is when in doubt, just make everyone else look good. That is never a bad option when you are on stage with someone. But then when you are working in a collaborative environment, especially if you're just starting out, that is never a bad philosophy to take to your job and to your life. And so I think that underlying premise is just truly wonderful. And then, yeah, as Michael was saying too, right? You will suddenly find that you're just more comfortable in certain situations because you have stepped out, right? You're practicing stepping out into a circle of people and doing something, or you're practicing speaking up and doing something. You're practicing jumping out at stage and doing something that we tell our law students in our clinical program, which is highly experiential. But many of our students have never really worked a job full-time before. We say to them, listen, when you get out of here, if you don't raise your hand, no one's going to call on you, right? If you don't step out, if you don't advocate for yourself, if you don't take risks, if you don't become an entrepreneur yourself in your practice, you will just have a career that happens to you. And maybe that will end up being fulfilling and wonderful, and maybe that won't. And so there's an agency that you get to practice by doing improv that is, I think, critical in terms of getting the professional and even personal life that you want.
Yeah.
And I got to add 2 more myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
like I said, I could keep going, but one of the things is attention. That's what you can get at. Like I talk about a communication, but higher than that is it's under the umbrella of attention, and especially since the pandemic, I feel that attention spans have greatly decreased.
Mm-hmm.
So having 2 hours each week where you are not on your phone, you can't be on your phone, you are connecting with human beings, you are watching scenes, you're learning in different ways for people that feel they learn by watching or learn by doing. So attention span greatly increases. And along with that, your memory gets better. The more you improvise, the better your memory gets. There are plenty of, I would say not plenty, there are some studies that talk about improv and memory and improv and its impact on the elderly and Alzheimer's. So there's a lot of kind of just awesome and sometimes weird benefits to an improv class to people that may not think like, I don't think so.
Right.
How is that going to help me?
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah. I was going to say, just in the emails that we first exchanged, I had jokingly said journalists could use improv. And
Yeah.
I was partly serious, but like talking to you guys more makes me think I come here with my list of questions, but good journalism is listening and not just following the bulleted questions I have. And
For sure.
so yeah, it's interesting. Mr. Murphy, for you specifically, obviously being an attorney and working in improv, what do you feel that improvisation has taught you about lawyering, and then vice versa? What has lawyering taught you about how to work in the improv space?
Oh yeah, I'll start. There's so much here too. Maybe the overarching principle, putting aside some of the stuff we already talked about, is
Mhm.
taking your work seriously, but not taking yourself so seriously, right? I think that has been really helpful. And by that, does that mean that like you just waltz into work and say, "Hey, I'm just going to go have fun out there, and I'm not going to try really hard"? No, of course not. You are going to try really hard, but I think every lawyer will tell you not every day goes great. Not every matter goes great. Not every meeting goes great. Not every court appearance goes great. And one thing we say in improv that has been tremendously helpful is we say is, do you know what a good improv show and a bad improv show both have in common? They're both over, right? And improv absolutely teaches you how to do or say something that maybe didn't work and just let it go. And part of that is necessity. You have to let it go because in doing improv well, you have to be completely in the moment. You have to really be listening and responding. You can't be thinking that the last thing that you did 10 minutes ago wasn't good, didn't translate the way you wanted. If you are thinking that, you are also now messing up now, right? And that is
Mm.
so applicable to practice, especially people that work in high volume practices where they're doing 5, 6 hearings a morning. Just being able to put that experience aside or take exactly what you need from it and do better the next time is tremendously helpful, not just in doing a better job, but in well-being. So, as part of my other shtick at the law school, in addition to teaching the clinic, I teach a class on happiness, well-being, and lawyering, which is specifically designed to teach the positive psychology and some would say negative psychology of lawyering, right? That it attracts super type A people who are very deep within their head and don't let go when they mess up very well, and often have incredibly high rates of depression, substance abuse, you name it. So we learn that science, and then we sort of transition into helping each of the students in that program figure out their own path forward in terms of how they're going to deal with that, and so that they're on the good side of the statistics and not the not good side of the statistics. One of the things we talk about, having something to do that isn't lawyering, that is a total experience. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be thinking about work. You can't be somewhere else and is not chemically habit forming, right? Because very, very often that total experience for lawyers is, and not so great. So improv can absolutely be that for lawyers. It has been that for me. And that's, I think, maybe been the biggest thing that I've taken from it. But in terms of how lawyering has informed my improv, I mean, a few different things, right? One of the beautiful parts of improv is that every single life experience you have and every single fact in your head and every single person that you've met is available to you. I have absolutely in improv scenes decided to become either a lawyer or a judge or some sort of actor in the legal system. And because I know the terminology, I'm able to use the jargon and the terminology in the scene in a way that adds so gravitas to that scene, and it is often funny, right? Like I can start articulating a hearsay objection, right, in a kitchen argument or something like that, and that's funny because that's just not something that normal people do. Although I'm imagining some lawyers hearing this, especially ones that are in lawyer couples, say, "Well, wait, no, we do that all the time." But we just have the dog be the judge or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but like being able to do that is wonderful. I was on an improv team once with a teammate who had a PhD in mathematics, and every so often there would be a scene in which it would involve some sort of STEM thing like computers or engineering, and he would come on stage and just start talking in pure scientific jargon, but you could tell he knew what he was talking about, and it brought the house down every time. It was really wonderful. So that has definitely helped there, and then also. And I don't mean to necessarily blow up the proverbial system here, but something that I have taken from lawyering to improv is that in some sense, we're all sort of making this all up on the fly, right? You can prepare as much as you want, right? Any lawyer will tell you this. You can prepare as much as you want, but you can only be so effective if you can't pivot and improvise. Because as you mentioned about your list of questions, which lawyers also have, right? And teachers too. If you can't jump from your list of questions and be responsive to what it is you're hearing, you're only going to be so good. And so that absolutely has been a skill that I learned over years of practice that I was able to take into improv, and it helped me acclimate to the principles of improv just a little bit quicker.
Thank you both so much for joining me. This was a really interesting conversation. Just to wrap things up, where can people, legal professionals, law firms find out more about Improv for Lawyers and the CLEs you guys do?
In the Indianapolis area, you can go to crossroadscomedyindy.com. And then at the top, you'll see Crossroads at Work. And then under that, you'll see CLE courses. And that will be with me and Michael. We'll have another one up soon. And Michael, anything coming up in your neck of the woods?
Yeah. So we are beginning the slow and torturous process of also offering this as an Ohio CLE. So our Ohio, if you happen to be a cross-border practitioner between Indiana and Ohio, keep your eyes peeled for that. But I'd be remiss if I did not mention that if you happen to run a smaller, medium-sized firm or a summer associate program or other bar association group, and you would like to have your own bespoke workshop, either for CLE credit or not, let us know. If there's one thing that we are, it's flexible and able to pivot and make up a program that will be the most impactful and valuable to you.
Thanks for listening to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about the Improv for Lawyers experience, we'll have all of that information in our show notes. And for more on what's happening in the legal profession across the state, please check out our website at theindianalawyer.com. There you can find more episodes of this podcast, as well as episodes from other podcasts in the IBJ Media Network. And while you're there, please make sure to visit our fellow IBJ Media publications. That's the Indianapolis Business Journal and Inside Indiana Business.
You know, the economy and the market are in a hairy place these days. It's up a lot, it's down a lot, it's sideways, and it seems on the hour there's breaking news coming out of all areas of the country. How do you get your head around that? How do you not go crazy in the process? I'm Peter Dunn. You may know me as Pete the Planner, IBJ columnist, and my job for years has been to help you understand your financial life better in context with everything else going on. So what am I encouraging you to do? Well, listen to the Pete the Planner Show. Yeah, it's a podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts, or simply listen at ibjpodcasts.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.